Peter, let's talk about the bigger picture here. It looks like people are continuing to spend on travel. I know we had some hurricanes that interrupted some of the flow, but outside of that, how good was the summer travel season?
The summer travel season was great, Emily. It was everything I think most of us expected, which was tons of pent-up demand. Anywhere in the world where people could travel. Of course, there's parts of the world still, even now in APAC and other places where it's still quite difficult to travel. So there is more to come in terms of opening up world travel. But the summer was great. Business has continued to be quite strong, and demand really hasn't ebbed since then. So everything so far looks pretty good, notwithstanding all the macroeconomic worries that you talk about all day. So we're feeling pretty good about things.
But if we head into a recession, I mean, I know people are spending money on travel to this point. Who's to say that people aren't going to say, oh, maybe I should maybe I shouldn't take that vacation, or let's just, drive to a vacation rental nearby?
Yeah, listen, I think macroeconomics will be what they will be. I think so far what's been demonstrated is that while there have been a few cracks in other categories, travel hasn't cracked. I think partly because people have missed it so much during COVID, and they've realized how much they want those experiences more generally. And we've seen corporate travel start to come back and other pieces start to come back. So I think, we have some good running room, but there's nothing to say that people can't start to change their minds. But remember, global travel is a $2+ trillion industry. So this isn't a zero-sum game. I mean, we're a growth company. We're trying to build our base of members, build our business up, offer great new tools for travelers, great new benefits. So we believe there's ample reason for us to continue to attract travelers. And even if they're trading down a little bit or making slightly different adjustments to their travel, we think they're still going to want to travel.
Do you think that there's something fundamentally different in terms of how people approach travel? This isn't just a few vacations they wanted to get out of their system, but is a whole new frame of mind?
Well, I think, anytime you have an existential threat to life on the planet, people probably respond with a little bit of like, I want to live, I want to go see the things I want to see. There are people my age and older who are at a point where they're saying, I only have so many trips left in my life, so there's a lot to get out of there. And I think COVID made us all reassess that. So I wouldn't chalk this up to, hybrid work or other things. I think it's really just people are realizing that experiences are what make life great, and travel is where we get all that. So, you and I have talked about it before. We all want to travel. Everybody wants to travel. And I think certainly we haven't used up that desire yet. In 5 years from now, has everyone, gotten it out of their system? Maybe, but I don't think we burned it off in, 8 months or 12 months.
Airbnb had a tough quarter, at least if you look at it from a market's perspective, unlike the positive reaction we're seeing from investors to your results. What do you think's happening there?
I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but I think part of what we observed in what we've seen with Airbnb is, they are a much broader company. They appeal to much more, room rentals, parts of home rentals. We don't do that. And I think the scale of that business is such that that is a market that may be seeing more weakness from the lower end of the market. We as a business are somewhat less exposed to that. And our Vrbo brands, we're whole home. We tend to be middle and upper market, really the same in our main travel brands. So we haven't seen those same cracks. But I think if you're exposed significantly to the broad global, lower end, you are probably going to be under somewhat more pressure. But, we think they'll do fine. FX, of course, is a challenge globally as well. Again, we're heavily weighted towards North America, which is great since the dollar is strong. But if you're weighted differently, that can have a bunch of different impacts on you.
Well, ADRs are still, average daily rates, still above pre-pandemic levels, but Airbnb, some of your competitors expecting those to moderate. Then there could also be this change in the business mix. Are you expecting any softness going into next year?
We haven't seen it yet. And again, the makeup of our business mixes are somewhat different. But hotels are certainly the big chains are talking about holding ADRs. Hotels so far have been willing to be less full in favor of holding price. Does that last forever? Do some hotels change what they do? Hard to know. But again, while demand stays strong, which it is now, I don't think there's any, end in sight to prices being up. And they're not just up, they're considerably up since pre-pandemic levels. And that probably will hold. In the home rental business, it's a little more volatile because you have single owners and there's a little more price pressure sometimes on some of them. But certainly in the hotel industry, the airline industry, I think prices will still be high.
So last quick question, Vrbo, give us the picture of supply and demand given what you've seen, going into next year.
Yeah, well, demand has remained quite strong for us, and other than the hurricane, which you mentioned at the beginning, we've seen strength, throughout COVID and since COVID has somewhat subsided. We're very bullish on next year. We've got, Vrbo is going to become part of our global loyalty plan, our One Key loyalty plan that's rolling out next year, and that's going to be a great opportunity for Vrbo members to participate in our other brands and our other members, Expedia and hotels, et cetera, to really participate in Vrbo. So we see a lot of opportunity there. And the supply side, we think there's plenty of room to grow. We are being more aggressive in that space, and we expect to add, a bunch of supply. So we feel really good about the brand, good about its part in our family of brands, and certainly more opportunity for us as we consolidate those loyalty plans.